The premise is flawed for the whole resolution. We are not engaged in active hostilities in Iran. I think if the president had responded, say, to the ballistic missile strike from Iran into Iraq and hit inside of Iran, clearly that would require an authorized use of military force. I would fully support that. I'm not saying that Article 1, we clearly have a role as members of Congress to declare war and authorize use of military forces. I will say Jay Johnson, who's a good friend, former Secretary of Homeland, DOD legal counsel, who used to authorize these airstrikes, said that this was a completely lawful military objective and that no authorization was needed from Congress. I agree with the Democrat Secretary Jay Johnson that in this case, we're not there. It's premature. And in fact, the president's trying to de-escalate this. Been clear he doesn't want war. He wants peace in the matter. And I think the last point is usually this goes through the Foreign Affairs Committee. We have hearings. We mark it up. Goes on the floor. The interesting thing about this is it's a non-binding resolution that will never go to the president's desk. So it's a bit of a charade because it will never have the force and effect of law. And I don't understand if they're that serious about it, why they wouldn't do a resolution that would go to the president.
Well, if the Senate passes a resolution, and they got some different language, Senator Tim Kaine got some different language, but Rand Paul supports it right now. Mike Lee of Utah supports it. Let's say it passes the Senate, then comes back to the House and passes the House, then presumably it would go to the president for his signature.
And I think that's absolutely correct. I think that's probably the more likely scenario is that Kaine's resolution comes to the House and then they'll go to the president, he'll veto it. I think the veto will be sustained. I think this was a very fascinating debate, Wolf. I don't know if you got to see it. We had a lot of veterans speak on the floor about what Soleimani did. He killed 600 Americans, wounded thousands of Americans on the battlefield, the Gold Star mothers. And a lot of these members of Congress now, we have a veteran generation coming in from the Iraq War, spoke about their personal experiences. And, you know, we took out a designated terrorist under the Obama administration with an authorized strike, both by Article 2 of the Constitution and also the 202 authorization.
Well, let me ask you this, Congressman. Let's say this crisis does escalate, that the Iranians continue to attack various U.S. targets inside Iraq, and then the president decides to retaliate by going after some of those bases inside Iran. Inside Iran, would that require a new resolution, authorization for the use of military force by Congress before he would be allowed to do so?
Absolutely, and I actually stated that on the House floor. In the event that happens, had he retaliate against the surface-to-air missile sites in Iran, there's no authorization for the president to go into Iran. And Congress does have a role in terms of declaring war. And I would argue that the president would have to come to the Congress to get that authorization.